What is a faction? A faction typically refers to a group or organization within BRM5 that players can align themselves with. Factions often have distinct characteristics and goals that differentiate them from other groups in the game. Some factions choose to be casual, while others tend to be more milsim, incorporating real-life tactics into their events. Factions can add depth into gameplay, as they keep players interested in BRM5 by introducing new ways to play the game, rather than just raiding the same few compounds over and over again. I would however recommend joining a faction after you gain 5 stars and are aware of how the game works so that you are competent and able to buy the required uniforms or weapons. For more information on the history of factions, you should check out Confused Ian's video, which is linked in the description. And what is it like being in a faction? Factions tend to follow a similar format of first filling out an application, which usually have a 100% acceptance rate, then attending a basic training, and then being free to attend events. Most factions have uniform and weapon restrictions, so be sure to look out for that before attending events. Of course, every faction is different, so lots of this can vary between factions, but this is generally what to expect when joining a faction. To join a faction, you can join the official Platinum 5 Discord server, where there is a channel named Faction Advertising containing most well-reputable factions within the game. You can also find a few advertising in-game, however these tend to be of less quality overall. Factions can range from casual to milsim, with semi-milsim as well. Casual factions tend to allow less restrictions on uniforms and weapons, and they also have less emphasis on real tactics, instead focusing on having a fun time. These factions also tend to be bigger, such as Timberwolves or Blackout. Milsim factions do their absolute best to mimic real-world tactics with long trainings, which can teach breaching, CQB, and more. Milsim factions aren't for everyone, so only join them if you are very interested in real tactics in a military-like environment. It is important to join good reputable faction, as they tend to have the most quality. However, there are some unknown factions which are good quality too, and a good way to identify a good faction is to read the advertisement and join the Discord server. And if it is well formatted and organized, then it would probably be well run and have effort put into it. There are many reputable factions currently, with some casual factions being Timberwolves and Blackout, semi-milsim being EMC, Virtus Security, Task Force 1949 and JSOC, and milsim being Tenacity Contractors, Juno Group, Ardent Corporation, and Task Force Kiru. Now, how do you start a faction? Starting a faction is very difficult, and it's probably one of the hardest things to do. I would recommend joining a faction first, ideally becoming a high rank, to get a general idea of how factions work and how to run one. When starting a faction, you're going to have to decide on your faction's purpose. Examples can be lore-based faction, heavy milsim faction, or a faction with no rules at all, or better yet, something that is a new idea not done yet in the faction community, as the key to making a successful faction is to be unique. A side note here, you should also get friends to help you create your faction to become a high rank, and a good way to do this is by joining a faction first. Next, you're going to need branding. This is easiest to do with a faction based on a real-world unit, as you have a unit name and logo already made. If you're making a PMC, please don't, or any other fictional unit, however, you would be able to make your own branding, which could make your faction stand out. A side tip here, try to stay away from making a PMC, as they have been overdone and gained a reputation of being low-quality Blackout copies. Of course, if you are very confident in being able to make a high-quality and unique PMC, then go for it. But otherwise, try to stay away from them. Next, you need to create and format your Discord server. FacProv is a faction hub which has many guides on creating a faction, one of which being how to format your Discord server. Then you're going to need documents for all sorts of things, such as basic training guide, event hosting guide, and most important factor in creating factions is to be creative. So think of new ideas on how to separate your faction from the rest. Be sure you have all areas covered, such as how to become a pilot or an officer in your faction. Lastly, you're going to need to create an ad and propaganda for your picture. This is a very important step in growing your faction as it creates a first impression on your faction. I would recommend watching videos on image editing and photography to create high quality images. You could also find someone with experience in that area to create pictures for you. For more tips on getting your faction started, join FactProv. Discord link is in the description.